All right, and welcome back to another great episode of Screw the W2 or hashtag Screw the W2, if you will. And today we got another great guest, a fellow John, if you will, John Stolzfus, who I met about 4 years ago. It was actually a real estate uh, seminar slash networking event in Indianapolis back in 2018. Both of us were in, shall we say, different stages of our real estate investing journey. I've been in touch ever since then, with various wins along the way. And as this came along, I thought John would be a great guest to have on the podcast. So I was lucky enough, as you can probably tell, John's actually stepped away from his self-employment or solopreneur, as he calls it, job site to join us on this. So I won't take up too much of his time. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. It
Yeah,
was
you
uh it was exciting.
Yeah, you bet. So obviously we've kind of touched on this with the whole concept of the show being more of, screw the W-2, the traditional 9 to 5, working for an employer who uh dictates your whole schedule, says you are allowed 2 weeks vacation, you need requests or you need permission to request time off and whatnot. And I think all of us have taken, different routes along the way, whether it's through investing or entrepreneurship, business ownership, etc. But maybe just kind of like maybe walk us back in history. Take us back to what your previous, or shall we say, last W-2 job was. What was like a typical day, typical environment for that?
Well, that was 4 years ago. So I had been working for a great friend, mentor of mine, installing custom kitchens. Um,
Okay.
we did that for about 8 years.
Oh wow.
Did a lot of traveled a lot to. We didn't build the cabinets, but we just installed them on site. We
Okay.
did a lot of work in extremely high-end homes on the Jersey Shore, got up into Hoboken, occasionally into New York City,
Oh okay.
occasionally down into DC. So we're working with a very well-to-do clientele, and thoroughly enjoyed that. Love the detail, love the environment. My boss made it, my former boss made it extremely hard to make the decision to go out on my own. But uh, it was it was probably his example that impressed on me. You know how valuable it is to treat the guys that are working for you, and
Mhm.
he certainly made it really hard to step away. Especially with I loved every aspect of the project, especially detail. Uh, been a woodworker since a kid. Uh,
Okay.
5, 6 years old, I'd bring home scraps from my grandfather's shop and make these crude contraptions. So, from a very young age, I loved making things out of wood, and just
Okay.
this just fit right into it. So, there was always that uh, desire to have some sort of a little shop, woodworking shop at home, and for I'd say the 3, 4 years, last 3, 4 years that I was working with on the installation crew, I was always looking for something that I could monetize
Okay.
and could never really narrow it down on a product um, that I felt would sustain my income.
Okay.
And so it was also right over that time where we were introduced to the concept of cash flowing real estate, which
Mhm.
at that point, when I was introduced to that concept, I was like, how's this possible? You can actually own a home, um, have a mortgage on it, and you'll profit at the end of the month after all the bills are paid. And then to top it off, the fact that someone else takes care of it for you was absolutely mind blowing. So
Mm.
so my journey in that space started in Memphis, Tennessee, with with Terry Kerr and his team there at Mid South.
Sure.
Um, and the really cool thing about the entire or majority of the team that I was working with, we all got hooked on the concept. So
Mhm.
there was about there was three of us that were buying from Mid South over that same time, and so it was the environment was electric. I mean, we were all jacked up about buying income property, and um, we're just having a great time. So um, as the itch to become self-sufficient increased, um, I was also I wanted to work on my own buildings.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not going to do that in Memphis, but I started looking for something locally there, um, which ironically, um, all the buildings I purchased in Memphis, it I transferred all the equity, available equity from our primary home to to purchase these properties in Memphis. But
Okay.
then I was tapped out. But it was like a drug, man. I was hooked. I had to buy more, and that's how I stumbled across Matt Terrier's podcast, and ultimately how we connected as well.
Hmm.
And learning how to get creative. And so that first building um, ended up being like an hour and a half away from me, but I wanted to I wanted to do all the repairs. I was involved in construction for gosh, almost 15 years at that point.
Okay.
And so that was my first attempt of being personally involved with a property that I would ultimately um, cash flowing. So um, is as the work increased on my portfolio, I realized how little time I had to actually go to work because we
Hmm.
were traveling consistently traveling 2 to 2.5 hours one way.
Jeez.
It wasn't unusual to have 11, 12-hour days because we'd spend 5 hours on the road. We'd try to get a decent day's work in, and so I was leaving my house 4:30, never getting home till 5:30, 6 o'clock usually, and that fire just kept burning to be able to work on my portfolio. But I recognized that uh, I wasn't going to be able to do it with the small amount of cash flow that I had. So I
Hmm.
had to depend on something to provide some backup,
Sure.
which, hey, I had the woodworking shop. That was basically I was trying to transition from a, a hobby to a paying hobby.
Okay.
And so, interestingly enough, my wife requested some small cutting boards, charcuterie boards for Christmas gifts one year, and friends raved, and they're like, "You got to sell these things," and that's really where it started.
Okay.
Started making cutting boards, charcuterie boards, and that about a year into that, we started going to our local makers markets, and we crushed it that second season. And I realized in basically the last quarter of that year, which there again, my boss was extremely generous. He basically allowed me to take November, December off so that I could make
Wow.
enough inventory to be at these makers markets every um, well towards the last of that year. They were almost every weekend.
Okay.
And at the end of it, I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" In Q4 of that year, I made almost a third of what I was taking home as an employee.
Wow.
And I said, "This is it. Like I
Mhm.
found something." And so at that point, and just before that all happened, I had also cut back to part time. So, I kind of had one foot out the door,
Sure.
lost all my benefits, obviously, by doing that. And, it was just kind of a emotional snowball effect from there where I was like, you know what, I got buildings I got to work on. I got woodworking to do. And then we come off of that Q4 of that year, and it was like, what am I doing? This is
Hmm.
crazy. 2, 3 days a week, I'm putting 12 hours a day, and I can just stay at home.
Yeah.
And so that's when I made the choice to just hang it up. And I thought it was amazing. All of a sudden I didn't have to answer to anyone. I was walking out the door 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I thought I had the world by the tail. And little did I know that reality was going to hit me 3 months later, where all of a sudden that high of that hot Q4 previously has now all of a sudden we basically burned through that, and like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I gotta get back to work. I gotta
Yeah.
do something. So
Doesn't last forever.
um, no, for sure. So it had a little honeymoon there, if you will, and couple months later, kind of settled back into, well, the reality of it is, I still got to earn an income somehow,
Hmm.
and it's so at that point we started on the self-employment journey.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what you said. That's probably the most important thing is we all need to earn an income. And I think we've just been maybe brainwashed is the best term, from grade school on of, oh, you need to get a job with secure benefits, 40 hours a week, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's one way to earn an income, but it can also be from, like you said, your woodworking. That can be from cash flowing real estate, to whether it's through Mid South in Memphis or Spartan down in Birmingham, or there's a number of turnkey markets throughout the uh, country that you can work with. A little segue for anyone listening to this: this is the first time you've ever heard about Mid South homebuyers in Memphis, Tennessee, and want to learn more. Feel free to check out my podcast, The Wealth and Freedom Nexus, episode 33. Interviewed Liz Nolan with now Liz Brody. Interviewed her with Mid South and kind of gave us a deep dive into the numbers of the Memphis market. And correct me if I'm wrong, John. I think you said you had like 4 or 5 properties with Mid South, or maybe I'm off on that one.
No, yeah, they manage 4 buildings for us.
Four
Yeah.
bill. Okay, so yeah, I only have
No,
one with
I'm
them.
sorry, 5,
Five.
but
Okay, gotcha. So
close.
So yeah, unfortunately, I only have one with them. They've kind of been a victim of their own success. They've really taken off. It's kind of hard to get on the list, and I wish I started investing with them back in 2018, but like can't go back in time. So
Yeah.
now you,
No, they've done really well.
yeah,
They're amazing to work with for sure.
agreed. So no, John, kind of taking us back to 2018. Obviously, that was about the time that we met in Indianapolis, and you kind of mentioned you had like wasn't like a light switch, like okay, I'm walking off the job. It was kind of more of a phase out where, hey, I'm working with my boss. He's letting me take 2 months off. Showcasing my woodwork and selling those and switching to part time, and then kind of making the final leap of going into solopreneurship. Kind of going back to the W two. Obviously, you mentioned with losing a benefits when he went part time, but are there any parts that you miss about your old W two job versus your life now?
Uh, Probably. Well, I go back and forth on this. I love being able to create a schedule, if you will.
Okay.
But at the same time, um, once it's your projects, once it's your business that you're operating, you got deadlines to meet.
Yeah.
When you're in your W two, hey, when it's time to check out, you're gone.
Yep.
Like it's 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever. You rolling back in the shop, you're leaving for the weekend.
Yeah.
You don't think about it, and you don't think about asking for a day off or taking a week off. Whatever, it doesn't matter what happens on the job site. But
Hmm.
now, as being that solopreneur or business owner, the pressure's higher on the job sites now because hey, we've got to get this completed. There's another project got to start next week, and so
Hmm.
I realized how true that whole saying is. That you leave a job working 40 hours a week for someone, and you end up working 80 hours for yourself,
Yeah.
and that single thing has been my biggest challenge is being able to say, what, I'm done for the day or I'm done for the week or we've got a we got a vacation to go to
Hmm.
and we're checking out. In the past few years, there's way too many vacations that I've showed up late to, or um, my wife and kids went without me for a few days, and
Hmm.
a lot of that was because I was a solopreneur. I realized that I didn't actually have a business.
Yep.
You know, like if I wasn't there, nothing was happening,
Hmm.
and that was because I didn't create a great team that could carry on for a few days or for a week or whatever without my active presence
Yep.
all the time. So that has been a bit of a brutal reality and a learning curve now for the past year now. Once I actually got that pounded into my noggin.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can't remember who said it. I don't know. There was a great quote, and I'm drawing a blank right now, but the true definition of a business is if you can leave for a month and then come back and the business is still running at the same level, if not better than when you left. That's the true definition of a business. And unfortunately, like
Absolutely.
you alluded to, and I've been just as guilty, we seem to confuse business as entrepreneurship, which isn't a bad thing. But like you said, you leave for a month and come back and, oh, no jobs are done, or, everything's at a standstill and no money's coming in. So the
For
only way I
sure.
bring in money is if I'm working.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's pros and cons there, but it's certainly it takes an intentional effort um, to be able to balance that responsibility of making sure your projects are getting done
Mhm.
and also actually enjoy what we thought what we were getting into. We thought we were going to be in control of our schedule,
Sure.
and we realized that maybe that's not the case if we don't structure it properly.
Yeah, kind of the old adage: do you control your schedule, or does your schedule control you?
Yeah, that's a little rough one right there.
Yeah. So now kind of taking a little positive spin, and I know you and I have, texted back and forth and, Facebook messaged, over the last 4 years. I think you said you're up to 20 units between obviously Mid South, but then units yourself, units that you have, purchased, renovated, rented, etc. What's been kind of, taking in holistically between your real estate investing, your woodworking, your business, etc. What's been the most rewarding thing for you since you left your W-2 job?
On the real estate side, what I like originally I had set that up as the intent was this was going to be my retirement fund.
Hmm.
Um, you and I have our thoughts of what everyone perceives as a retirement fund and how realistic that actually works. But so I didn't really subscribe to that, you know, parking money in an account and hoping that there'll be 2 million, 3 million there when I'm 65 and
Right.
I can sail off into the sunset. So I I decided that real estate was going to be my retirement fund,
Okay.
and I wasn't going to enjoy too much of the benefits before are at a very comfortable place where, it provides, not only pays for itself, um, the growth and the renovations, whatever, and
Hmm.
then possibly, 20 years, 15 years, whatever, we might be able to collect some benefits. So that's kind of what in my local portfolio here, where I'm actually actively working on the buildings. It's
Okay.
been really rewarding to take some of these buildings that have been treated as, um, cash cows, if you will. They
Okay.
haven't been really well taken care of,
Hmm.
and you know, I I I have to buy them at a cheaper price in order to do what I want to. But I've been going in, I've done thorough renovations, updating as much of the mechanicals as I possibly can, and basically creating a foolproof structure.
Okay.
And so, in the most satisfying part of that is to be able to offer a maybe an A class building in a C class area,
Okay.
and seeing the tenants walk in and actually have a legitimate shot at a housing that they wouldn't typically be qualified for.
Okay.
So the returns are lower like that,
Hmm.
but I am also substantially reducing uh, the the maintenance over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So, um, which the way that it's structured is, I'm okay with that. I don't need to see a ton of cash flow right now. I just
Okay.
want to be able to get it to a point where in the next 15 years, I don't want to be constantly going back in and fixing different things. It's
Hmm.
still going to happen to some degree, but it doesn't have to be, major updates
Sure.
because they've already been done. And so as the portfolio is being stabilized that way, I'm looking at a 10, 15 year structure where, at that point I hope to be able to reap some of those benefits. But the most rewarding is definitely be able to provide um, that great quality housing to the tenants. And so then with that, it has also the the construction side has kind of started to develop around that concept, and now I'm providing those services for multiple investors here in town that kind of
Okay.
subscribe to the same concept where we're just coming in. I'll do some piecework where I might repair this, or we did quite a bit of floor refinishing as well, where I just do parts of a project. But there's been a few clients where I'm coming in, we're renovating an entire unit, and we're just providing an immaculate apartment to the marketplace that
Hmm.
it's providing great returns, but then we're just trying to reduce overhead, maintenance overhead for
Sure.
the next 10 years. So the construction side is definitely becoming my baby for sure.
Okay.
The woodworking has kind of phased out a bit. I mean, I'll still do it some, but we're definitely not um, we're not focused on that as much as we are the construction to actually now legitimately build a business in that space.
Okay. And then kind of with that, I'm sure with having that A class property, with all the, updates done to it, then typically I'm sure your tenants come in, they're more likely to stay longer too, which obviously lowers your maintenance cost, but then also the turnover cost. Whereas,
For
if
sure,
you just, I'll just throw on a coat of paint and, oh crap, they're here for a year. Now I got to turn the unit again. Obviously, it might have
mm,
more cash flow, but you got more turnover costs.
for sure. And and that was something that I learned was probably one of the most expensive things in that space was I kept getting these turnovers, and so you're losing a month of rent, and then
Yeah.
you have the get ready costs. I was like, this is insane. Like this, I'm losing 2, 3 month total
Mm,
It's like somewhere we've got to do something differently. We're gonna have to choose different materials. I know there's one building that it was a two-bedroom in Memphis that we were dealing with that a lot. The first 3 years we must have had like four, maybe five turnovers, and every time we were putting new
wow.
carpet in. And this was just as the trend of vinyl plank was coming out. And
Sure.
I mentioned it a few times, like this carpet is getting really expensive after a
Yep.
while. At some point, surely it makes sense to just put vinyl plank in, so that the carpet is what, 50 cents a square foot. It's not that expensive to install,
Hmm.
you know, but if you're turning that three, four times in a 3 year period, you would have paid for vinyl plank after a
Yep.
while.
Yeah.
And
Well, the
so
nice thing with the
it,
vinyl plank, if something happens, I don't know, heavy, sharp object, falls and whatever cracks or scrapes one of the planks, well, you can just pop that one out and replace it.
mm-hmm, for sure,
Carpet, unfortunately, the doggy, goes to the bathroom in the corner or someone spills red wine on it, you might be able to scrub it out, but you're basically gonna have to replace the entire carpet. You can't just replace that one
for
section
sure.
very easily.
Yeah. So it was developing, like taking those experiences and trying to foolproof these buildings as much as we could has been a huge focus of me. Where coming out of the custom cabinet world, that was one thing that drove me crazy was the quality of cabinets that was available to investors. What do we
Hmm.
have? We can go to Lowe's, Home Depot. You might have Menards in your area, but
Yep.
um, it was like that's not going to hold up very long.
No.
We do have some RTA options that are a step up, but then man, they're just under a custom cabinet price. But at the same time, I'm not going to wait 3, 4, 6 months on a custom cabinet.
Hmm.
And so that was I was able to connect with my one of my local shops to develop a. Um, I wanted a bomb-proof cabinet, something that was going to be able to take a ton of abuse and is going to be easy to clean up. So Um, that's the other thing. Each of my units are getting most where we can. We're putting brand new cabinets in, and it's a very modern flat panel design, but it's all 3/4 plywood and
Okay.
water resistant plywood. So um, I expect these kitchens to be working great for the next 20 years. And if a door does get damaged, which I don't know what's going to have to happen to damage 3/4 inch plywood, but it's just pop it off, put another panel on, it's all good. So,
Mhm.
but so there's little things like that that I've been trying to be really proactive on reducing maintenance in the long term. So
Okay.
that's really been the rewarding part of what I'm getting into these days for sure.
All right. Cool. So, well, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, John, and again, thanks for sharing your story and journey with my listeners. If there's anyone out there that maybe was is in the same boat that you were in, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, just stuck, so to speak, or feeling stuck in their 9 to 5 job, has thought about branching into business, investing, entrepreneurship, or whatever, but just is maybe worried about leaving that safe and secure paycheck, the benefits, whatever the case may be, what words of encouragement would you offer to, encourage them to take that next step?
I would definitely don't do it alone.
Okay.
There's so many people that are very willing to help, whether it's a paid mentor or just somebody like a business owner that you look up to. There's so many people out there that are willing to provide support, and depending on what business or whatever the venture is that you're going into, it may seem like it makes sense to try to do it yourself at first,
Mm-hmm.
but absolutely as soon as possible. set it up so that you are not the only one that's productive.
Sure.
And that was, I waited way too long to begin thinking that way. I didn't want to deal with employees. I didn't want to deal with training people, but I was facing burnout. So
Hmm.
and probably one of the if there was a single book that really started being impactful for me was the E-Myth by
Okay.
Michael Gerber. That was I was listening to the audio, so if I would have had the physical book, there's probably more than once I would have thrown it across the room because it was infuriating how many buttons he pushed that where he talks about the technician, and I'm definitely the technician.
Mm.
Um, I'm good at something, so I'm going to start a business in that space. Where I'm interested in something, I'm going to start a business in that space. And there's a big difference between a business operator and a technician.
Yeah.
We're technicians. We're great with our skills, but we can be really crappy business owners.
Hmm.
And until here recently, I hired a business coach, and we started talking about how we look at profits, and I was blown away. Like, hey, profits are my salary.
Yep.
It's like, no, that's not how we look at it. We got to have profit. You have your salary, then you have your profits. It's like, yeah, I was clueless on that.
Yeah.
So, you know, study up on the E-Myth, get around people that have created businesses or successfully done self-employment, and just don't do it alone.
Hmm.
That would be my recommendations.
All right. Yeah. Good advice. Yeah, I think what's the old adage, no man's an island, and um everyone needs a good team, whether you're a NASCAR driver or whomever that might be.
Sure, for sure.
All right. Well,
We
I know
like to
you.
think that we can do it ourselves, but that's really kind of selfish thinking.
Yeah, two. What's the old adage? Another old adage: two heads are better than one, or in this case, three, four, or five. So
Absolutely.
sounds good. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on, John. I really appreciate it, and I'll let you get back to your woodworking jobs. And hopefully, next time we speak, you'll be on number 21 or 22 for your real estate portfolio.
Sounds good. Hey, it was a pleasure talking and catching up again.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, John.
Yep. See you.